First half of today's gospel reading comes from Luke chapter 12, verses 32 through 34. Do not be afraid, little flock, for it is your Father's good pleasure to give you the kingdom. Sell your possessions and give alms. Make purses for yourselves that do not wear out, an unfailing treasure in heaven, where no thief comes near and no moth destroys. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. I remember a time when I was seeing treasure hunters everywhere. It started back in a time when we were still allowed to travel, and I was down in Kentucky, and I saw them out there on the streets. I traveled back to Wisconsin, and they were here. Everywhere I saw people strolling along the streets, staring intently at their smartphones. And one day I saw a couple of kids wandering in and out and around the church, and I asked them, "What's going on?" And they said, "We're catching Pokemons." Pokemons, they explained, were like little treasures that you collect as you advance and play in this game. How many of you remember Pokemon Go? Every day I started reading some story about Pokemon Go. This thing went global quicker than the coronavirus. In 1 month, it went from something I had never heard of to a billion-dollar industry. It was disrupting the normal routine of life. Countries started to ban Pokemon Go from their borders. The church did not discourage Pokemon Go because the presence of youth and young adults actually began to increase around the church as churches were designated safe zones. I enjoy walking, and I had to become more aware of others on the sidewalk who were not paying attention to their surroundings. Several times I almost got run over by these fellow pedestrians staring at their smartphones. One day I was hiking around Devil's Lake, and I got frustrated by having to step aside for the treasure hunters. Finally, I decided to stand my ground. It happened as I was walking along the beach. I see 3 teenage boys, and they're walking toward me, intent on their smartphones. They filled the pathway from side to side, and first thing I thought was, what is wrong with these boys? 10 feet away, there are teenage girls playing on the beach, and they're staring at their smartphones. Well, I just stopped in the middle of the path, and they keep coming toward me. An arm's length in front of me, they must have noticed that my shoes were not moving, and so startled, they stopped suddenly, and they looked up for a moment, and they apologized for almost running me over and passed around me. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. Jesus wants to remind us that whatever our earthly treasures may be, they are not going to build us a stairway to heaven. The Old Testament book of Ecclesiastes warns us about the temporary nature of what we build up here on earth. Vanity of vanities, all is vanity, proclaims Ecclesiastes. 33 times the word vanity appears when discussing all that we do and all that we build up here on earth. It will all just blow away in the wind. And Jesus says it this way: make purses for yourselves that do not wear out, an unfailing treasure in heaven. What is this unfailing treasure in heaven? The only thing I can think of is our souls. Souls are heaven's eternal treasure, life that goes on forever. Can someone create for me a soul-catching app? Something I can put on my smartphone so when I'm walking around and tells me, here's a soul ready to be harvested? It is the harvest of souls that Jesus is referring to in the second half of today's gospel. Luke chapter 12, verses 35 through 37. Jesus says, be dressed for action and have your lamps lit. Be like those who are waiting for their master to return from the wedding banquet, so that they may open the door for him as soon as he comes and knocks. Blessed are those servants whom the master finds alert when he comes. Truly I tell you, he will fasten his belt and have them sit down and eat, and he will come and serve them. We want to be ready for that day. And Jesus desires that we prepare other servants to be waiting with us for our master. And the Bible gives us ways to increase our chances of winning treasures for heaven. Jesus says, sell your possessions and give alms. Isaiah chapter 1 offers a list of things that will help in the soul-winning game. Verse 17, Isaiah says, learn to do good, seek justice, rescue the oppressed, defend the orphan, plead for the widow. These are what we might call good works. Good works have a dual purpose. Good works ease the suffering of others. These good works also draw people to us. Treasure in heaven is what comes from doing good works. For if I am doing a good work, if I'm seeking justice, if I am rescuing the oppressed, defending the orphan, pleading for the widow, if I'm doing these things in Jesus' name, I'm drawing people to Jesus. A medical doctor and I were chatting one day about our various professions, and I mentioned how disappointed my mother was when she learned I was going to become a pastor. She'd always wanted me to be a doctor, I said. And the doctor, trying to make me feel better, I think, said, you know, the best we doctors can do with all of our medicine is just delay the inevitable. We can save a man's life here on earth, make it so he can live a few more years. But truth is, we're just delaying the inevitable. You pastors are turning people's attention to Jesus, winning souls for Jesus. That is treasure that will last forever. And that's the work of the church, to build up treasure that will last forever. You've heard about the 10 Commandments. You've heard about the greatest commandment. What if I asked you to name the most difficult to follow commandment? Today I'm inclined to choose Luke chapter 12, verse 32. Jesus commands, do not be afraid. This one's difficult for me. Fear is an instinct. Fear is a survival response to something going on around us. Jesus' first instruction to his sheep is, do not be afraid. Why should we not be afraid? Jesus' answer, for it is your Father's good pleasure to give you the kingdom. You see, you are already a treasure bound for God's treasure house. God has already captured you on God's treasure soul-catching app. And with this assurance already in our hearts, we have no need to fear. Do not be afraid. Do not be afraid to do what? Luke chapter 12, verse 33. Do not be afraid to sell your possessions and give alms. It is, do not be afraid to commit yourself to doing these good works, even though they seem a sacrifice, even though they come with a feeling of uncertainty. Go back to Isaiah chapter 1, verse 19 this time. We are told, if you are willing and obedient, you shall eat the good fruit of the land. God will bless you. God will take care of you. Do not be afraid, for a life of faithful giving will not go unnoticed. Again, look at the verse. Verse 19, Isaiah chapter 1. If you are willing and obedient, you shall eat the good fruit of the land. Notice there's two parts to this statement. The first part is to bless God by being willing and obedient. And when we are building up treasures in heaven, we are blessing God. Then God returns to us the blessing. You shall eat the good fruit of the land. Too often we forget the first part. And we say, God bless us. Or we try to switch the order and we say to God, Lord, let us eat the good fruit of the land, and then we will be willing and obedient. Isaiah says that when our lives are a blessing to God, God will bless our lives. Last story. At a gathering of church leaders, one of our bishops, I think it was Bishop Shinazi, proclaimed that the Christian church has lost the culture war in America. We are not the moral voice that we once were. We no longer have the respect we once enjoyed. The church no longer holds the high ground when it comes to influencing people on how to live their lives. And then the bishop said, just get over it. Admit it, and then let us, the church, get on to being the church, to faithful living. Let us get back to being the church Jesus calls us to be. If we want the blessing from God, our lives need to be a blessing for God. Before we say, God bless America, we need to say, America bless God.